Um, so I got started with horror because we were like a horror family. So everybody was watching horror. Like my mom, my brothers, we sit around like Halloween, all the Halloweens are playing. We're sitting like this close to the TV, ruining our eyes, eating buckets of candy, watching Halloween 4, 5, 6, all of them. Even the movie theaters, like my mom would take me. I saw Halloween H2O in theaters. I was 8. I saw Scream in theaters. I was 6. I was in theaters watching these movies just in there, like, oh, wow. So it was like a part of my upbringing. Also, we were a rental family. We were a Blockbuster family. So all those like random, like Puppet Master 4, Pumpkinhead 3, like the like deep cut random sequels really have a special place in my heart, especially Demonic Toys. Although that movie is not good, I'm not gonna say I'm not gonna watch it again. That would be a lie.
I'm crying like I don't know you, but we were also a horror household. Renting Friday night rentals was definitely a big thing in my household growing up. So hitting up that local Blockbuster Hollywood Video was definitely our bag. My parents, shout out to the 90s, were, we just watched whatever. My favorite marathons are very much like your New Year's or 4th of July's of the Twilight Zone. Big favorite. I can watch that all the time. But yeah, horror was no stranger in my household outside of like personal horrors and atrocities and things that we all experience, which also shapes the horror genre. But I had an aunt at the time, before she dived a little bit more into religion, who would get those really, okay, look at your face, those really like deep cut international horror films. So stuff I know I probably shouldn't have been watching.
Girl, like Frontiers.
Now, Kat, you kind of touched on it a little bit. Yeah, so horror was definitely, horror oftentimes does reflect a lot of what's going on in the real world and the horrors of the real world. And obviously everyone's experiences are very different. Obviously my experience growing up with horror was very different than either of yours. Growing up as a person of color, were there any kind of horror films that you remember like watching and being like really kind of reflecting what was going on and kind of reflected to you like what it felt like to grow up as a person of color in the 90s or the 80s or just like growing up in America?
Yeah. So one, I was a bit like at the time, I was more so just focused on what's happening because child and teen, what's happening in my immediate neighborhood. So maybe not really having all of the language and all of the things to really articulate like what I'm going through. I mean, like looking back on it, I know a lot of my peers had saw Tales from the Hood as kids. And for some reason, that was one of the movies my mom would not let me see, which, right, y'all can't see Jasmine's face, but I was really interested about that. So I want to dive into more about like with her about why that was, but probably because it was too much like real life, like what I'm seeing in my everyday life. So I would understand why she's like, oh, no, we're not doing this today. But these were things that I kind of aligned with more once I had that verbiage, kind of like middle school, high school, very much seeing that horror is political. So even though people are like, it's not, like, no, it is. And then unfortunately, fortunately, because I don't really want to see people that look like me die in real life or in movies. But unfortunately, due to lack of representation, there wasn't many things that would align with my personal life. Like I don't see myself, or it's hard to find people that look like where I'm from or relate to the people where I'm from that are relatable in general that are in these films at that time. So there was nobody for me to really align with. For myself and my friends, we would align with the villains. Now the villains are taking all the dumb people out, and the people that look like they could be really offensive or are really offensive in the films. So that is who I'm aligning with, the villain or the other.
I think Eve's Bayou is a good one. It's not, people don't always look at it as horror, but it's just really a Black coming of age story, especially if you lived in the South. So that one, I watched that like really, I was like 7 or 8. And Tales from the Hood, I was like 8, and I actually saw that and was like, ooh, this is a little too poignant. Ooh, I'm making a little bit of connections. But like Kat was saying, there's only a few in that sense, because a lot of times you get Black characters in that time, you were getting a caricature. Like, you weren't getting like a real person. You were getting a sidekick. You were getting something like, but it's up, it's like Demon Knight. We know a few other, like, there are some standout films, but we didn't really get the final girls like we're getting now. We're getting like 2 or 3 a year now. Oh my gosh, girl. Like, this is a new era. But growing up, I only had like those two staples, really.
How did you two meet? How did you two cross paths? And then eventually, once you kind of found that you both had this passion for horror films, when did the idea for the podcast come about?
Well. We met through a mutual friend because all of our friends have like become friends, or in our case, our friends have married each other after they became friends, and we just absorbed each other like a parasite. So that's how we're friends, and that is how we met. We lived together for a while. We used to work together, all the things. So things that usually divide people have made us stronger. We're also fire sign sisters, so there's that. And so one day, because random, I was just like, I think this is what you want to do, this thing. And Jazz was like, okay, cool, let's do this thing. So we like did it. That was literally it. And I know that sounds like, oh, that's so simple, but that is legit how the conversation went, plus or minus a few words.
So then when it comes to the podcast, you've obviously you've been doing it for a while here now, and you've covered a lot of different types of horror films. You've covered all different sorts of genres from all different like countries and all that. So what is kind of your favorite horror films to cover or discuss? Like, what are kind of your favorite, whether it's a subgenre or anything like that, like what are your favorite horror films to discuss?
I am the resident Giallo fan. I love a gloved killer who is just stalking behind a window and he's stabbing somebody with a really nice outfit on. Her outfit was popping. Unfortunately, she's dead. But I love Giallo films. French Extremity. I love those. Titan. I force people to watch that. Kids don't watch Titan, but adults, sure. And I think I really enjoy like demonic possession. I like demons because like they give it a little extra spice, it's not going to just be a stabbing. It's not just a human. No, they're changing reality. They're popping up through portals. They're impersonating you. They're ruining your credit. I really just enjoy demonic possession films. They're a good time.
Come on, ruining your credit. I mean, not come on, but like for the sake of the story. Let's see, if I'm not forcing us to talk about some of my favorite subgenres, so whether we're doing vampires, zombies, or cannibalism, which is one of my faves that makes my skin crawl, but for some reason I can't stop going back. I actually enjoy talking about movies that I wasn't initially probably into, and then was pleasantly surprised or pleased while walking out. Like, I feel like those are some of my favorite conversations, because yes, I'm getting a kick out of talking about stuff that we enjoy, but I like we're lifelong learners. And so I'm always in like, oh, let's try something new. Let's do some discoveries. Let's get some information. So it's always a good time when you find out that the hour and 30 of your life and more or less was not wasted, and you can have a good dialogue about it. That's my favorite.
And then Kat, with your subgenre, or like you said, movies that you've kind of reevaluated and have kind of found more appreciation for, are there any like specific movies in particular that like that come to mind of like I was a little too harsh, or maybe I just wasn't in the right mindset, and rewatching it for the podcast, I was like, this is a really good movie?
I'm trying to think about, you got a good question. I'm trying to think about one that was recently. I think Don't Worry Darling, out of like ourselves and then our like a group of our friends, was one that just jumps out at me currently. That I was like, I thought I don't want to say I thought I was gonna feel a different way about it, but I wasn't as insert emotion here as versus in comparison to my peers, because they had thoughts and I was like, well, actually, I like the way this is like, I kind of like this and I kind of like that. I see where you're coming from though, but I feel that's one that jumps out at me right now. A few of them are probably like some like, I don't want to say B-list, C-list, because that's not fair. We're all making movies, but you know, things that aren't like you would see on the main docket at the movie theater. Some of those movies have had some pleasant surprises, especially when you go on the internet and your Rotten Tomato score is like really one far end, and the IMDb is like the opposite end. Those are your gems right there.
Since doing the podcast, you guys have gotten like some really cool opportunities. You've got to do a lot of really cool things with it. Most recent example I can think of, you got to be guest at Midsummer Scream, and got to like have your own table and everything at a convention and a panel. What has kind of been like the coolest opportunities you've gotten to do since the podcast has taken off?
Ooh, Midsummer Scream is a big one because it's like horror specific. Like, ooh, like all the horror fans are in here because you know horror fans, we're a little out of control and our fandom is aggressive. It is like just like anime fans and stuff. We come dressed up as the characters. We pulling up with 3 days worth of outfits. We spending $200 buying trinkets and toys. Yes, I am getting a trinket or toy. I'm leaving here with something. Okay, so it was just really fun that we were in a space and then people. When me and Kat talk, we're friends. We're homegirls. We get on that call, we talk about a movie and we edit it and we push it out. We don't really consider, like, we know people are listening, but to have people come up and they're like, yeah, I know you. Yeah, we listen. I'm like, huh? Because we don't, we're not thinking about that. We are teachers. Okay. We have full-time jobs, so it's like we're doing this in the middle of the night. We just go do this, put it in here. All right, y'all, bye. And it's like, oh yeah, y'all got me through this, y'all got me through that. I'm like, oh, that's so nice. Or having other people go, oh, I started this podcast because I saw y'all look like me and I could do it. And that's really like that'll keep you going, because I'm like, all right, yes, for the community.
I felt like some of the most exciting things we did outside of Midsummer Scream, because Midsummer Scream was also exciting, but being able to connect with folks at like just the different cons like BlurCon. We've done a couple like live podcasts at the Alamo Draft House. That's really pretty freaking cool, because what, you could do that? Like and the sky's the limit. Like, honestly, I'm just hoping somebody passes at somebody's Universal Studios so I can tell you about these roller coasters next.
This question is actually for Kat, just because I quickly want to talk about in the main image for the podcast, you are wearing a shirt that says, "Damn it, Janet." So I must ask, are you a Rocky Horror Picture Show fan?
The answer is always yes and then some, because if you look right below it, you see how I have "Don't Dream It, Be It" inked on my body forever. So it truly is blood in, blood out, to the left and to the right.
But Rocky is just so much fun. Like the midnight shows, which is kind of like it's literally the best thing ever.
Yeah, I want at BlurCon.
Yes, and I hated it. I hated it because it wasn't a good time. I hated it because they cut the time of the movie and we ended right before the floor show began, as I predicted we would. So right, exactly. I was sick, but Rocky is that girl.
But the floor show's like one of the best. That's like one of the most crucial parts.
I know. And then I couldn't figure out if we were watching the UK version or the US version. So that's also what I really wanted to see, because, extra song in the end. So I'm just like, I need everything. And there was no shadow cast, but they're working on one for next time. I know.
When it comes to recommending horror films, like this question sometimes tricks up some guests. When it comes to recommending horror films, what is your go-to answer?
I gotta think about this, because I was blindly about to say Titan, and I cannot just tell people to watch this. No, I cannot just tell people to watch that movie. I mean, I would just go with something probably plain. I mean, not plain, but I feel like, there is no blanket horror movie that works for everybody. But I just think, like, the OG Halloween, you can never really go wrong with the OG Halloween for me. It's Mikael Myers for me. We're here. I support him and all he does.
If I don't immediately say Martyrs out of my mouth, which is usually the first thing I see, there we go, because I think that everyone should see Martyrs. I truly believe that. It is a holiday film, just like Inside is also another holiday family-friendly film. Good luck, guys. So that's how I feel watching that. But a truly safe film, like, you don't have to be scared about Mima. you know, coming in and having a heart attack. Is Night of the Living Dead, the one from the 60s. It goes up, it's effective, it's always gonna be bad. But my answer is always Martyrs.